Despite the president's dumpster fire polling, his party scoring some wins in Kentucky, Ohio, and Virginia. Abortion rights mostly driving the Democrats to the polls. But never mind that. The braggadocious big guy thinking it's all about him. Joe spiking the football, saying democracy won and MAGA lost. Politico reports how Biden basked in the moment, making call after call to the night's big winners. And how his dorky staff was sharing Dark Brandon memes in their group chats. Binder also praising her boss. Listen.
If you look at what Cameron did there, he spent $30 million trying to connect the governor of Kentucky, Beshear, to the president, right? And he called it a Beshear-Biden agenda. Beshear ran on infrastructure. He ran on lowering costs. Those are the president's agenda.
But the president didn't go out and campaign himself on that issue.
But it is rare for a president. It is rare for a president to go to a state that has been coined by all of you, a deeply red state.
The White House boasting about the Beshear-Biden agenda, but Joe barely lifted a finger to help Andy Beshear secure his win as Kentucky governor. In fact, the Democrat didn't want anything to do with Biden.
The governor's race has nothing to do with who's in the White House. It has to do with what's going on in your house. It has to do with bringing in good jobs. It's about expanding health care. At the end of the day, this should be about who the best candidate is with the best plan and the best track record.
All right, Dana Perino, what happened last night?
Lots of things. Let's just take Beshear, Kentucky, for example. Young governor, pretty popular, had a pretty good approval rating. Abortion was an issue early on, and I think Daniel Cameron, who is a great candidate, he's Attorney General of Kentucky. He had Trump's backing. That's a state that Trump won by like 35 points or something like that. But incumbents are hard to beat. Abortion is an issue that's hard to beat, and get out the vote is difficult. You mentioned in the commercial break about fundraising. I don't know the details in terms of how much was spent in Kentucky versus others, but overall, yesterday, Republicans were outspent by a lot. One of the things that's happening is that small dollar donors are really strong in the Democratic Party, right? They have this, it's called Act Blue, and it's like throwing seeds into a field with lots of fertilizer that you saw out in California, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, here everybody's sending their money in. On the Republican side of things, the GOP primary has taken a lot of small dollar donations, right? Also, President Trump's PACs take a lot, and some of these campaigns didn't have enough. And Republicans are getting swamped by Planned Parenthood fund, not only the money that Planned Parenthood has, but the organization is superb. So that is one of the things that happened. The other thing that happened is in Ohio on the abortion amendment is that the writing of that amendment was so horrible. And I don't know how it was allowed to go forward. If you actually read the whole thing and try to diagram the sentence, you would look like a mad scientist because it didn't make any sense. But the other thing is there wasn't enough engagement on the Republican side. So people are thinking about that you cannot wait to engage on your position on abortion, however you're going to message it, however you're going to talk about it. Talking about it is very important. So that is an issue. I won't talk the whole time here. I'll move on. But I want to mention this. The Democrats are trying to get abortion referendums on several different states that will matter greatly in the 2024 general election. And that includes Nevada, for example, Florida, where you would have to get a 60% turnout or approval in order for it to pass. What kind of a turnout motivator is that for Democrats? Also, pay attention to the young vote. They are organized. We saw this in Wisconsin when they did that special Supreme Court election that was also about abortion. You had an 88% turnout rate in the county where the main campuses are in Wisconsin. What do you think that's going to look like in Florida or in Nevada, or if they get one in Georgia? So it's a serious problem that Republicans need to wrestle with. I do think Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, I thought his messaging on abortion was the best I had seen on abortion for his position. I think he worked his butt off. In some places, Republicans were able to win, but they came up short. And for somebody like Beshear, who will probably run in 2028, I'm pretty sure he doesn't want Biden Beshear as his call letters, right? He'll want to be Beshear on his own, independent, and that's what he was trying to say on Monday.
So abortion and cash, Jessica, is that the story of last night?
And pot.
And pot. Yeah. Abortion, cash,
Don't
and pot.
forget about our marijuana. No, that's not the only story. The main headline is Democrats continue to overperform in the Biden era. It's just, you can't dispute it. It is blowing the polling out of the water. Republicans haven't really had a good showing since Trump won in 2016. And they really, and I know that there are a lot of them, deeply conservative people that are coming around to the idea that Donald Trump loses himself elections and he loses the people that he endorses
Well,
elections.
they took the House in 2000, right?
2020.
20, yeah.
Yeah, by
2020.
3 seats. So remember it was 2022. That was your red wave. Remember when you said, I'm getting a 40-seat wave, and then you got 3 seats and a George Santos?
Oh, don't remind me.
Okay. Anyway, Dana's right. The wording on the amendment in Ohio was funky, but people understood what it meant. And forget often, and I think it should be more of a line of conversation about this, that Roe was originally about privacy. It was a privacy decision. It wasn't about abortion. It is nowhere listed in it, which is why Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself said that she didn't think it would hold up forever, because it's not about abortion. So that's how they managed to get, it was a 7-2 ruling with conservatives siding with the liberals, because the point is that a decision as important as to whether you are going to carry a pregnancy to term or not is between you and your doctor. And that's what they ran on in Ohio and talked about constantly. That's how they got Kansas. That's how they got Kentucky, Michigan, et cetera. And the GOP will not get out of their own way on this. They have found no avenue to talk about this like civilized people. 58% think the GOP is too extreme on this. And then you have the new speaker, Mike Johnson, sitting up there. He's the sponsor of no less than 3 bills that would make us have a national abortion ban. Andy Beshear was successful because he's a really good governor. Also, how he managed the floods in Kentucky was one of the main things that people supported him for. But his most effective ad was a young girl who was 12 years old when her stepfather impregnated her. She's just looking into the camera. She never mentions the word abortion. It's about freedom. It's about choice. And in the Ohio bill, it's a heartbeat bill, and it has no rape exception. On what planet do you think people are going to go for this? And this is women and men. It's not just women. 20% of Trump voters in Ohio voted to make sure abortion is legal. Glenn Youngkin did, I understand, Dana, you saying his messaging was better than others on this. Bans turn people off. You cannot talk about abortion in that way. Each pregnancy is so distinct and it is so difficult. You have pregnancies that are wanted that you lose. A majority of women who have abortions are people who've had kids before. It's part of family planning. So you look at that girl, 12 years old, the 10-year-old in Ohio, going to Indiana for health care, and Republicans will continue to lose on this.
Judge Janine.
I look at it a little simpler. To me, it was about Ohio, Kentucky, Virginia, Pennsylvania. Purple states, 2 red states, Democrats winning. And the issue of abortion is one that Republicans either have to get straight on or they're going to lose on it. And the way they lose, they can't ignore it. They can't make believe it's not there. So the question is, how do you handle it? Well, it's not really how the Republicans handle it, because right now they don't have 60 votes in the Senate. So stop trying to pass a federal legislation. It's not going to happen. You're creating unnecessary turmoil for Republican candidates down the ticket. The truth is that when Beshear went out there, and I prosecuted those cases with the 12-year-old girls and the 10-year-old girls. Cameron, who is a great AG, supported not just by Trump, but supported by McConnell, he tried to change his, go a little more left. It didn't matter. Women want freedom. And what's going to happen is that dozens of states are literally going to put these abortion initiatives, I don't care what you call it, privacy, I don't care. They know what they're reading, and they're going to win on that. And Republicans have to understand this is not an issue they win on. This happened in 2022, it's 2023, and 2024 is right around the corner. And so all you have to do is throw out that word for Democrats. They want to defend it, and it motivates them. And it only helps the Democrats. And as for Joe Biden saying, with the evidence is, I'm strong, Beshear said it best. He said, Biden had nothing to do with my race.
Greg.
Well, I got to say, Democrats are very lucky that they're running against a party with principles. Because when you have principles, you're less likely to compromise in exchange for power, right? So, yeah, sure, Republicans can win and you'll get lower taxes and a stronger economy and more security and less crime. But if that means you're going to give in on abortion, I prefer to lose on principle. I think a lot of people feel that way. Dems, it's usually the opposite. Power trumps principle. It's why they were okay with Soros funding DAs that destroyed our cities. The country suffers, but they won those seats. It's why the original party of free speech comes out in favor of censorship, because it suppresses Republican opinion as disinformation, and they win. It's why they don't mind a non-border, because maybe long-term it will help them with votes, more voters. But this is how the chips fall when you vote regarding abortion. If this is how it happens, fine, right? You can now discuss it as an act and not a right. It's no longer a constitutional right, so you can have one and you can live with it. But we can still talk about it. It's a loss. It's a denial of transformational change. It's a decision for most people. I'm not talking about specifics, but for most people, done out of fear. But we no longer have to pretend it's anything more than that. We don't have to have political discussions about rights. Abortion is based on a fear that is greater than the actual reality. And if you don't believe me, talk to somebody who had a baby and then think about how they were before they had the baby. That's called a transformational change, right? The woman becomes a different woman than she was before when abortion was an option. And that drives the fear. Once you see that, you can't unsee it, right? It's the best anti-abortion argument out there, and no one is making it. People do have their reasons for abortions. You mentioned a very, very tragic and ugly one. But people make decisions out of their careers or maybe their relationship. The person they're dating isn't the person they want to marry. But underneath all that is a fear of this transformational change. And if you admit that, that might actually move you to maybe a different stance than you have now.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.